What are some ridiculous history facts? The Erfurt latrine disaster occurred on 26 July 1184, when Henry VI, King of Germany, later Holy Roman Emperor, held a meeting of nobles in the Petersburg Citadel in Erfurt. The combined weight of the assembled nobles caused the second-story floor to collapse. About 60 of the most titled people drowned in liquid excrement. A Chinese emperor escaped an assassin by running around a pillar. After 2 hours, the assassin got bored and went home and wasn't charged for his crimes. The out-of-breath assassin runs around the column, realizing that he has become the laughingstock of the empire. Meanwhile, the emperor is sitting on the top of the pillar, eating ramen and watching the assassin chasing the tail end of his own cloak. The longest ever U.S. presidential inauguration speech was made by William Henry Harrison on March 4, 1841. The day had terrible weather, yet Harrison chose to deliver his speech nonetheless, running 8,445 words. In fact, the speech was so long and the weather so terrible that Harrison caught pneumonia and died on April 4th, making him the shortest reigning U.S. president ever. As St. Lawrence was roasted to death on a gridiron, he is said to have remarked to his torturers, "I am cooked on this side, turn me over." St. Lawrence is the patron saint of cooks and comedians. Your like and subscription will really help my channel. Ancient Romans would put sandals on the hands of sleeping people, then tickle their face so they would slap themselves. Et schu brute? The battle for Castle Itter, a castle in Austria where the German Wehrmacht and Americans fought side by side with French POWs against the German SS. Claudius Drusus died in AD 20 from asphyxiation when he tossed a pear in the air and caught it in his mouth. The pear tree was put on trial, found guilty of murder, and destroyed. It might not be true. This story was described 50 years after Claudius's death. It is quite possible that he was killed by a man named Sejanus, but it sounds funny. Colombia has a period in history literally called the Dumb Homeland Period because of how incredibly dumb politicians acted at the time. About 180 years ago, some say it never stopped. When the Romans laid siege to Themyscira, a real place weirdly enough, they attempted to tunnel into the city. The Themyscirans released bears into the tunnels. Thus, Tunnel Bear was invented. The Spartans never built a city wall, figuring that their reputation alone would mean no one would dare attack them. But during the Persian War, the Persians, who had already burned Athens twice, hired a Greek guide to take them to Sparta. But when they got there, they saw a kinda crap-looking city without even a wall. They figured there was no way this place could be the mighty Sparta they had heard so much about. So they figured the Greek was lying, and thus Sparta was spared. I read about this in the book Persian Fire. Maybe it's just a legend. Another story about a Spartan soldier who was asked, "Where do the borders of Sparta reach?" The soldier replied, "About here," gesturing to the end of his spear. This is Sparta? No, this is madness. At one time, there was not only a pope and an anti-pope, but also a counter-anti-pope. The popes had long been sitting in Avignon in France, but in Rome, they decided to choose their own pope. After negotiations broke down, pissed-off cardinals raised a third pope in Pisa. The Battle of Bull Run during the American Civil War was called the Picnic Battle. Many civilians from Washington went on picnics on the sidelines and watched. But once the battle actually started and the Union started to get its ass kicked, they all ran away, running over injured soldiers and dead bodies, and generally disrupting the battle. This was actually a relatively common thing during the Civil War. I know it happened at Gettysburg too. The first bomb dropped on Berlin by the British during World War II claimed no human casualties, but it did kill an elephant. The shortest war occurred between Zanzibar and the British Empire, lasting around 45 minutes. Both countries fielded a couple thousand men. However, the war ended with a single Brit wounded. Meanwhile, the Zanzibarians suffered approximately 500 dead or wounded, and their entire navy, a yacht, 2 boats, and a shore battery, gone. General Omar Bradley was stopped by MP during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II due to them thinking he was a Nazi infiltrator. The irony was that he was stopped because he correctly identified the capital of Illinois as Springfield when the officer thought it was Chicago. Montenegro technically was in war with Japan for 101 years, and they signed a peace treaty in 2006. Montenegro was aligned with Russia in Russo-Japanese War, and they declared war on Japan, but they forgot to peace. During the Cold War, there was an idea to drop XL condoms labeled medium onto the Soviets to make them think we were anatomically superior and be more afraid of fighting us. During the most critical portion of World War II, the Japanese thought they had sunk or disabled 3 American carriers, when in reality, they had only bombed the USS Yorktown 3 times. They were caught with their pants down when the bombs started landing at Midway. Ancient Greek and Roman marble statues were actually originally painted and were colorful. A lot of the statues' paint faded away and went away over time. Some people cleaned off the paint thinking it was debris or dirt. Your like and subscription will really help my channel. Thanks a lot for your donations.